Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Charles, exercise specialist at the Cardiac Rehabilitation Center at Richardson, here to lecture you a little about physical activity for cardiac health for today's educative capsule. So we'll discuss a bit what physical activity can do to you, what the Canadian recommendations are, and how we can apply those recommendations in our life, and eventually kind of gauge what amount of physical activity to target. All right, so let's start with taking a look at the known benefits of physical activity. And I'm telling you right away, the list is quite long, all right? Well, let's go through what physical activity can do for you. So first and foremost, most of you guys are here because of cardiovascular health. So of course, physical activity is an excellent way to improve your cardiovascular health by improving all of those other factors, but also by improving your fitness, which is one of the biggest health indicators in general. So with physical activity, you're able to improve your physical capacity, but also your endurance, your strength, and even your flexibility, depending on what you work on. It's a very good way also to manage your blood pressure and to eventually improve your cholesterol levels. It also helps manage your blood sugar. So all of those three things that usually your physician looks at, so diabetes management, blood pressure, and cholesterol can all be improved by regular physical activity. If you exercise regularly also, you'll be able to reduce your risk of stroke. The cardiovascular system, whether it's the heart or the vessels in your brain, they all benefit from regular physical activity. A bit outside the box here, but with physical activity, you can also reduce the risk of certain cancer. It's not necessarily all the cancers, but a couple of them, the colon, and I think maybe also the breast cancer, you can reduce your risk by exercising regularly. Physical activity is also a great tool for weight management. Not really the best tool to lose weight, but to maintain weight and to keep your weight steady, that's an excellent tool. Also, a problem that's a bit more common in women, older women in general, osteoporosis, so our bone density dropping with age. Well, if you challenge your bones and you make your muscle pull on those bones every once in a while with exercise, well, you're going to be able to have more dense bones and to prevent osteoporosis this way. Similarly, if you improve a bit your balance, your gait, your strength, you will also be able to reduce your risk of falls and thus your risk of injury also. And physical activity on a regular basis will also give you energy. So we talk about reduce fatigue and increase energy level, and for you to be able to do more activities within your day, whether it's physical activity or activities of daily living. Physical activity is also very good on our psychosocial state, or our psychologic state. So you're able to usually decrease symptoms of depression and to better control stress and anxiety if you do physical activity on a regular. You get kind of a release of joy hormones on physical activity, and usually it helps to be in a better mood a bit too. Regarding confidence or self-esteem, usually people who do physical activity on a regular basis have better self-esteem. They kind of know a bit more about themselves and what they are able to do, and they're usually a bit more satisfied with it too. We spoke a little about the links with the brain, but there's even more and more known literature that's starting to show us that being regularly active with physical activity can help prevent the cognitive decline of your brain that comes with age. So it's a way to better concentrate, to have better attention, even sometimes having a better memory. If you make the circulation going, there's a bit more oxygenation going up in that brain, and usually that can help even improve or prevent decline of cognitive function. All of those stuff are meant for the biggest improvement that we usually see with physical activity, which is actually your quality of life. All right, once you come out of the hospital, their role is to take you out alive out of there, but to be able to live as you want to live, that's the ball is in your camp for that part. And physical activity is a great tool to improve your quality of life, to be able to engage and enjoy the activities that you want to enjoy, whether it's playing with your grandchildren, going to the mall to see your friends, or having any type of social activity that include a bit of physical activity too. So try to find a pill that can do all of that, all right? So physical activity might be a bit tougher to swallow, but there's not a pill in the world that's the best medicine than physical activity. Let's take a look at what the Canadian recommendations are regarding physical activity. And that's kind of a novel concept a little. They've been breaking down not only your physical activity, but what you do with your rest of the day also. Because it's good to exercise, but it's also good to notice what you, or be aware at least of what you do with the other 23 hours in your day. So they broke it down into physical activity, sleep, which is the how we recharge and get stronger and heal our in general, and also what you do with the rest of the day. All right, so regarding physical activity, the recommendation here is moderate to vigorous aerobic physical activity, such there is an accumulation of at least 150 minutes a week. So here we speak about moderate to vigorous aerobic activity for 150 minutes a week. On top of that, also to get some muscle strengthening activities using major group muscle at least twice a week. So each of your muscles should get a little strain at least twice a week. And in the end, also some activities that challenge your balance. All right, so that's the part for physical activity. And you see that on top of that, we also had that light activity, any type of activity that doesn't create shortness of breath. Well, those you can do as much as you want. You'll benefit the more you do, because that means that when you're up and doing stuff, you're not sitting on the couch or sitting on your butt anywhere. All right. Regarding the sleep, that's when we get stronger. That's when we recharge our battery. So the recommendation is to try and get 7 to 8 hours of good quality of sleep. Of course, it's not always within our control to get some good sleep, but there's also stuff that we can do to improve our sleep hygiene and increases our chance of getting some good quality sleep. In the end, what's left in the day, it's what you do with the rest of your day. How do you spend your time, whether it's at work, with your hobbies? We do try to limit sedentary time to 8 hours or less. So that means sitting down for less than 8 hours a day. But of course, sometimes we're a bit stuck at work or depending on what type of activities you do, sometimes we're kind of condemned to be in front of a screen. Just take me, for example. Right now, I have to sit in front of the screen to do this presentation. So if we go a bit further, if you can't really aim for that 8 hours or less, well, at least let's try to have no more than 3 hours of recreational screen time. So that means anything, computer, cell phone, tablet. So outside of work and in your leisure time, try to have less than 3 hours of those, because if they pile on top of what you do during your work day, well, that starts to be way over 8 hours usually. And otherwise, if you have to get stuck in front of your computer, well, breaking up those long periods of sitting time as often as possible. Hey, simple example, if you're sitting down right now, we stand up. You can just move your legs a little bit around for a minute or two and sit back down. And just that will help you break down those prolonged periods and get some circulation going and get your body activated a little, so it's not sitting down and doing nothing for too long. Those are the recommendations for adults 65 years old and older. The slight difference with younger people is that we have included the activities that challenge balance. So once you're past 65, it's worth it and recommended to challenge your balance to maintain it. And with younger adult, the sleep recommendation is more 7 to 9 hours. So as we get older, it's normal to get slightly less sleep. Let's break it down into a bit more details, that recommendation. So when we spoke about aerobic exercise, that 150 minutes a week, that's what we also sometimes hear cardio. So any type of activity that's kind of cyclic that will get you going. We're talking about walking, cycling, swimming, anything can be done continuously this way. The recommendation spoke about 150 minutes, depending on how you break it down. If you want to do a little something every day, that could be 7 times 20 minutes. We hear a lot 5 times 30 minutes. You break it down however you want. Moderate intensity, what does that mean? So the recommendation is not just physical activity, but moderate intensity. So that means that you need an activity that's able to increase your breathing rate. So moderate intensity is that I'm a little bit short of breath, but still able to handle a conversation. There's also vigorous intensity in there. If it's safe for you guys to go there, I will tell you about it. And if you want to go there, we can show you how. But that's the type of intensity when the conversation can be maintained because of the shortness of breath. So the shortness of breath starts to become uncomfortable in vigorous intensity. All in all, whenever you do cyclic or cardio activities, it is recommended to at least have your session last 10 minutes if you want to have sustained benefits effects. So all of those effects that we saw the previous one, it's a bit like a pill. You have to take it every 1 or 2 days because those effects are not necessarily long lasting. It's more like acute effects. All right, so taking a little session here and there and spread it out through the week so you can always benefit from all of those benefits is the best way to go. But if you can't do 10 minutes at the beginning, hey, do 5 and we'll build up to there, all right? It's not the end of the world, but if you have to kind of allow a moment in your schedule, do try to aim for at least 10 minutes to have some sustained benefits. Resistance training or musculation or weightlifting that we hear sometimes, but it's not just weightlifting. A typical session, when we say about targeting all the major muscle group, we're speaking about the chest area, the shoulder area, the back area, the legs, and usually the core also. All right, so that means that if we want to cover all of those muscles, we need about 4 to 6 exercises, depending on how we can combine sometimes different muscle groups. And generally speaking, for our clientele here, well, 1 or 2 sets of 10 to 15 repetition is usually the best way to go because that way you're able to improve both strength and endurance at the same time, which are 2 qualities that are important. And if you gain more strength and more endurance, that's complemental to your cardio also because you'll be able to sustain more cardio and it's going to be easier for you to do cardio because you're going to be stronger and more endurant. In the end, do manage the intensity. We want to feel somewhat of a challenge, but you don't need to go till exhaustion as we sometimes see in those magazines or on TV. It's not up until you're not able and you're deflating on the ground after your last repetition. Keep some in the tank. Do get a feeling of challenge and rest between your exercise, maybe anywhere between 30 to 60 seconds. The idea is to get a little bit of rest and then to push it back to kind of unlock new strength to get the second set and the other sets going. There was also flexibility or stretching that's not necessarily in the Canadian recommendation, but it is always a component of a complete physical activity routine. When we exercise, well, we strain our muscle, we create small tears in our muscle, and sometimes when our muscle heal, they don't necessarily all line up properly with the fibers. So helping them stretch and realign themselves. This way you can also maintain and improve your range of motion. If you can't get your shoulder up in here, well, maybe that there's a bit of strain and tension around your joint, and getting some stretching done there will loosen up everything, and eventually you could gain some range of motion. That's another good way to prevent injury because muscle that stay tense or have tension or adherence can more easily cause injury. So with a bit of stretching, you keep that flexibility, that looseness in that muscle. And for your muscle, that means health. It's another good way also to relieve soreness. So sometimes a little bit of tension, a little bit of soreness that builds up after our exercise, especially the first couple of sessions of resistance training. A bit of flexibility at the end will help you with that. So flexibility, it's a bit up to you how often and how frequent you want to do. There's not really something as doing too much stretches. So it could be anywhere between 2 to 7 times a week, depending on what's your intention with flexibility. If you're really looking to improve your range of motion, you might need a bit more steady work, a bit more like daily work. And otherwise, you can try to maybe do a little bit of stretching after each exercise session. It's usually what we try and recommend. And when you do stretch, once again, it's all about moderation. We want to feel some tension in our muscle, but not pain. We don't want to injure ourselves. And to get an efficient stretch exercise, you need to hold that stretch at least for 30 to 45 seconds. You'll see that when you do stretching exercise, at first, there's kind of an initial resistance from your muscle fiber to stretch. And usually, if you keep it steady, after 15 to 20 seconds, you kind of feel everything loosen up. And usually, we're even able to increase a little bit the tension. And watch out, we don't want to be bouncing on those stretches. You want to hold that tension continuously. All right? Now, let's take a look at what a typical exercise session could look like. I'm going to make an example here where I combine everything into one session, but you could also spread them out through the week, all right? Or not do a cardio, resistance training, and everything in the same session. You could split it to two different moments in the day, two different moments over 2 days. That's up to you to see how you make it fit. So a good cardio session usually starts with a good warm-up, 5 to 10 minutes where you gradually increase your heart rate, you prepare your body for more intense activity. And especially in the cardiac clientele, you guys have a couple of medications that usually slows down that transition from rest to exercise. So the warming up 5 to 10 minutes at low intensity. The idea is not to be short of breath right there at the beginning. It's just to warm up our body, get our muscle a bit more warm for exercise, and let our heart get to that exercise level without being strained too much. Then, when you fall into your training zone, then that's when we expect to see a noticeable increase in exercise intensity. That's usually the time that we start to try and reach for moderate intensity to reach that increase in the respiratory rate. And that should also be followed by an increase in heart rate. So depending on what target heart rate or what type of intensity that we're prescribing to you, that's when you hit your training zone. And same thing at the end. We started slowly, and we're going to end up slowly also with the cool down for 5 to 10 minutes. So it's about slowing down and making that transition as smooth as possible back to rest. With all of those medication pulling down on your blood pressure and your heart rate, sometimes we get a bit dizzy if we stop too abruptly. And that's when we start to get a bit dizzy, to be a bit hypotensive. And that's why slowing down for 5 to 10 minutes at the end, where you just simply, you get all of the intensity out, but you just keep your body moving. So on a bicycle, for example, that would mean killing all of the resistance, but just keeping your legs into motion without any strain. When you're walking, that means walking slower at the end, just to kind of let that shortness of breath go away, let your body come to rest while still getting some slight activity in there. All right, that's how we can prevent a drop in blood pressure and to feel great after your exercise. Usually resistance training, we will suggest for you to do it after cardio if you do cardio in the same session, because resistance training usually needs to be on the warmed up body. So why not use your whole cardio session as a warm up to resistance training? You won't have to warm up if you start with cardio. But if you do start with resistance training, you would need to get a little warm up done for your muscle before getting into it. We spoke about 4 to 6 exercises targeting large group muscle. Here we break it down into 3 to 4 for our main muscle group and 1 or 2 for the abdominal muscle or the core part that we hear so often. So that means a bit more your abdominals and your back. So we spoke about the number of reps and everything in the slide before. Then comes balance. It's always good to have maybe a little bit of fatigue in your balance, because that's usually when you're more challenged on your balance. All right, so depending on your starting level in balance, it's up to you to find an exercise that's challenging for you. You shouldn't be too much in control when you do a balance exercise, but you shouldn't be too much out of control too. So we're kind of walking that fine line of, I'm getting a challenge to my balance, but I'm not menacing falling on the floor either, all right? Because we don't want you to injure yourself too. So balance usually comes in a bit more at the end, or it could be mixed in between some resistance training exercise too. Flexibility usually comes at the end. Your muscle, once again, needs to be warm to stretch. Cold muscle don't stretch, all right? So if you want to have a flexibility session by itself, you should warm up a little bit, a 5 minutes before, to get your muscle in the right state. And otherwise, in a typical exercise session, it's better to do at the beginning, starting with flexibility. Flexibility is a bit like a solution to the strain that we create with our exercise session. So doing it before, it kind of takes away the efficiency of it, and actually you can lower your performance by stretching in the beginning. So what we will recommend is more like dynamic stretches in the beginning, like swinging your leg, just to kind of get that range of motion ready, while static flexibility, where we hold for 30 to 45 seconds, comes a bit more at the end of the session. This here is my favorite figure, my favorite graph regarding physical activity, because that's the best one to kind of figure out where that 150 minutes comes from and to better understand where to try and target yourself on that curve over here. So we see in green here the line of benefits regarding physical activity, depending on the amount of physical activity that you do. All right, so we can see that the more physical activity we do, well, the more benefits we start to have. At some point here, between the green and yellow light, yellow area here, we see that we kind of hit a ceiling. We start plateauing. So that's our 150-minute mark here, if you look at the two zones. So that means that if you go over 150 minutes, you're not necessarily getting that much more benefits. And if you look at that red line over here, that's also when your body starts to take somewhat of a toll. So there is some risk in arms that start to appear. In our case here, it wouldn't necessarily be related to your heart, but a bit more to risk in arms of injury or of straining to your some of your joints too much sometimes. What's interesting in this here is that if you can see the biggest improvements or the best return on your investments happen from starting to doing nothing, 0 minute of physical activity, to just getting some active living. You see, in the active living here, we're speaking about light, moderate daily activities, tens of minutes to maybe an hour or two in the week. So we're still under the recommendation, but just getting off your couch is how you're going to reap the best benefits. All right, you see, starting from 0 to, let's say, 50 minutes, well, you'll get a lot of benefits compared to, let's say, passing from 75 to 150. So those of you who start low have the biggest potential for benefits also. So with that figure, that means that you don't necessarily need to aim for 150 minutes. If you want to do everything in your control to prevent a cardiovascular event, then that's kind of the target you should be looking for. But if you're just trying to look to do your best and to slowly start to integrate physical activity and you've never done it in the past, well, just having a more humble goal and just trying to increase your physical activity bits by bits is the most important, and that you'll still benefit. It's not because you're at 120 minutes that you're not reaping benefits, all right? So what's the conclusion on that? It's that first, every steps count, all right? So just getting off the couch and standing up, you're lapping everybody on the couch already, all right? So, and you're reaping benefits. After that, doing a little exercise is way better than none. So if your hour walk, planning your schedule, you got something coming and you're busy in the end and you only have 30 minutes, well, better do 30 than none at all. All right, even though you had planned for 60. So every little step count, every little minute count too. That also puts into perspective the importance of reducing sedentary activities. The first step, if you're always sitting, should be just to stand up and walk a little bit more, all right? Just that will already give you benefits, and we're not yet speaking about moderate intensity and higher intensity activities. So just not being on your butt all day will already make a difference. And in the end, the idea is to try and find the types of activities that you enjoy, all right? If every time you go for activity, physical activity, it feels like a chore, well, you might consider dropping, or it might be harder to motivate you to do so. But if you try several types of activities and you find out those that you love and you have kind of a diversity and you have activities that you enjoy and that are accessible, it will be easier for you to increase your minutes. And you don't have to go from 0 to 150. Make some small steps around the way and slowly build up, because every step you make in the right direction will pay off on your health, all right? So I think that is all for us today. So I will wish you guys a very nice week. If you have any questions regarding physical activity for health this way, and by the way, know that those recommendations are good for cardiovascular population. They're exactly the same for general population. So you guys might have bigger barriers to overcome to get there, but you'll reap the same types of benefits that other general without a cardiovascular event might have. But for you, it's even more important since we know you're already a bit more at risk for your heart. So if you guys have any questions regarding today's session, feel free to send them our way, whether through email or the next time we see you in class. And you can also get the memory aid or the cheat sheet on our website if you want a bit more details about what I've explained to you guys today. All right, so I hope you learned a little something, and I hope that you now know that physical activity is the best pill in the world, and that you'll try and find a way with us to benefit from it as much as you can. All right, so have a good day, and Charles is out. Bye-bye.